investors, sophisticated investors, on our projects on a deal-by-deal basis, and we invest with sponsors who are the active component, who are out there actually purchasing the properties, overseeing the operations and management of the properties, and or the active piece. So we partner with them as a joint venture partner, typically what you would call either a limited partner or a co-general partner on that joint venture operation. So that's typically how we put our projects together.
Well, I know that pattern works. My most prolific syndicator, going back to when I started really keeping track of this stuff in 2014, has done 122 offerings with exactly the same format. He's found a group of very successful developers, and he comes in and finishes out the capital stack, takes control for a while his investors are in there, and then when the deal sells, refinances or whatever, he gets his money back. So we're at, I think this last one was 123 in my numbering system. So I know it works, and he raises 5 to 10 million a time. And interestingly enough, he does 506B offerings, accredited investors only, and he's not taking new investors. His investor pool is frozen, and he's just got just enough. So that's a good one. And I just closed a deal last week with a fellow from Austin, Texas, who wants to do what you're doing. He went out and found someone who was raising some money and was a couple $1 million short of finishing the deal. And he put together an LLC and raised money from investors. And his LLC is a $2 million member with no management responsibility, just a passive investor.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So I think
that's great.
That works. Huh? What type of properties do you invest in?
We started back in 2013, as you can see, and we've spoke a little bit about this beforehand, but I served as a Navy pilot for 20 years. So my last tour of duty was here right outside the Pentagon, working for the Navy headquarters staff. So when I got back into the area around 2011, I was on my last tour of duty. I had back-to-back orders to finish up my 20 years there in Arlington, Virginia. And I retired from active duty service in 2017. But I started the company back in 2012 unofficially. And it took me about a year really to get everything put together. My accountant at the time, who I was with since 2010, is now my business partner. And we started small. After we got the company launched in 2013, April of 2013, we started with smaller properties, single family residential renovation, coming in more of like a hard money lender would come in. But we were able to bring in maybe up to about 85 to 90% of the monies required. And we'd have the borrowers bringing in about 10 to 15% at a smaller scale. And we found a lot of success there. But, as the years went by and we went from 2013 to 2018, money was getting cheaper and cheaper. Interest rates were coming down, and hard money lenders were becoming more attractive to several borrowers that were doing very well and didn't want to pay maybe a little bit higher of the fees and the interest that we were charging as a kind of a private money lender or equity lender. So we kind of found our niche on the development, new construction properties, where we could come in and bring in about $500,000 to $5 million a project under an LLC, filed under a 506 Form D, like you said. And we could raise that money through a pool of investors that were in our inventory that were friends and family to start, but has quickly grown into about 180 investors that are in our group. And we go out to those investors on a deal by deal basis, but we want to bring them on board and get comfortable with us in our process, see our deals, go through our private placements, come out to a property and do a tour. so that they get a chance to get comfortable with us, our process, and our kind of structure of how we put things together. And then at that point, they're on board. They get to see all of our projects and have the opportunity to potentially invest.
This isn't very cool. I need to step away for a second.
No
No more
problem.
than that. I'll be right back.
You got it. We get to look at that big board you have up.
There we go. Here I come. Okay,
All right.
There was
No
some
problem.
interference coming.
Yeah.
Virtually is always
Virtual
fun.
interference. Yeah.
So, what asset classes do you invest in?
So we still like that residential renovation. You know, we like those quick turn projects. We could bring in $100,000 to $300,000. We structure those a little different. We'll maybe do like an equity loan, or we'll do something that's a little bit different than a private placement. But on the construction projects we do, whether it's new development of condominiums or apartments or townhouses, or it's senior living or storage, we look at everything, Gene. We're not specific to a definite type of asset class. We're more interested in who the sponsors are and really the locations, and then whether or not it meets our parameters from a structure and a return standpoint.
So everything you're doing is a syndication, though. You structure everything as a security, right?
We do a Form D, so it's an exemption. It's not an actual security that we're filing. We're doing the Form D exemption. So we do a private placement. We file that Form D exemption, and then we do the state. Each state that an investor's coming in from, that first sale, so that we record it with that state. So we have a PPM.
Why would you do that? Why would you do blue sky?
Well, that's how our attorney has recommended we move forward on these. And to be honest with you, that's kind of the guidance we've gotten from our attorney, our corporate securities attorney. Well,
I understand that you would file a securities notice in each state where you have an investor. Mm-hmm. But in a 506, 506 offering, whether it's a B or a C, it is it's exempt from full registration, but it's also preempted from any blue sky rule. But you do have to do the Form D, and then you file the notice within 15 days of raising money. Are you it's all family and friends, so it's 506B, right?
Yes, 506Bs we are typically doing, as you know better than I, we are allowed up to 35 sophisticated non-accredited investors. Our non-accredited investors are our very close friends and family. Okay. And then everyone else that is involved or investing with us are accredited investors. So we still go that we don't generally solicit, obviously, any 506Bs. Anything that we share on a 506B is very, very generic. And it also, we wait typically, anything we talk about that may get into some details is always after the offering is closed. So we wait a period of time before we share any details. We have a newsletter that goes out every 6 months. We do have some details in there, but again, it's typically on deals that have closed for investment for
and those newsletters that you send out are going to people who you might want to have them call you and contact you and see if they could get in your database and hear about deals that in the future they might be able to invest in.
That's correct. And I do it that way because I don't like to go out and try to raise money when I have to go out to raise money for a project with someone that is not already on board. And
you shouldn't do that.
No, exactly. And I do that for two reasons. One is because I want to protect myself from a compliance standpoint. And at the same time, I kind of feel like it's not a good business practice to go out and try to raise capital from an open pool where if I already have investors on board, they know who we are, they've gone through that process. We spent hours on going through everything so that they're comfortable. I'd rather do it that way so that, again, it's all the prerequisite questions are done. They're comfortable. They know everything. And then it's really dissecting each project on a deal by deal basis.
Right. Well, the rule against advertising deals with advertising for a current offering or a contemplated offering. So
Right.
you close your offering, and now you're going to talk,
Yep.
and you don't have another offering. That's fine. You have to be a little careful about when you stop talking about previous deals. In my world, John, when you sign a fee agreement, if you ever were to sign a fee agreement with me on a deal, that says to me that you have a contemplate an offering. So at that point, you just have to cut it down and just count on. I use the phrase that your database freezes for that offering. You can take anyone who's in your database up to
Right.
that point.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's fine. So it doesn't sound to me like you're planning on doing anything different in the next 2 or 3 years, are you?
Well, we are a growing company. We're growing both vertically and kind of horizontally. We've scaled to the point now we've hired our first employee last month, so that's exciting. He's an Army veteran, and being a Navy guy, I don't hold that against him, but he's a good guy, and he's fit right in and has done a great job. We've made him our director of investor relations, so he's out there, trying to find business and talking to folks about what we do and sharing information. And then we also just recently acquired Juniper Square. So we're excited about that because I think that'll make our process more efficient and give us a nice look for current investors and new investors that are interested in our
You
business.
bought Juniper Square?
Well, I didn't buy it, but I acquired the software to now be our investment portal. So it's exciting because now our process is going to be a lot more efficient, and our investors can utilize that as a tool for their own benefit. So it's pretty exciting.
Well, you don't know that story about me, but when I was 45, I had been, maybe 15 years a syndicator. And I just got through the end of the year and the tax season and all that stuff. And we had sent out 1,676 K1s. And over 850 investors. Wow. And there was no Juniper Square. There was no IMS. There were none of these companies that we have today that could give you the back office help. And I was raising all my money through the broker-dealer community, and they were quite rigid on the time when I had to get my reports out and everything. So it was really, really a lot of work. And I came home one day and sat down with my wife at the kitchen table where all the great decisions are made. And I said, I can't do this, with this many investors and all this. I'm going to have to get more space and hire more people, and my business can continue to grow. But I'm the type of guy that 3 times in my life I've said, stop, time out. I don't want to go the next level. So I said, if I don't do this anymore, I'm too young to retire yet. What am I going to do for the next 15 years? And we decided we'd go to law school. So that was 27 years ago. And we went to law school to become a syndication attorney, to stay in the industry, stay in the real estate, stay in the securities industry, and built on what I do, which is a lot of mentoring. And it's been a great choice. But if there had been a Juniper Square, if there had been an IMS, and I could have hired someone to do all the back office, where things would be different. Certainly my company, where I'm talking about my client with 122 offerings, is using back office. And I have probably 10 clients who over time, starting back to 2014, have done 20 deals or more. And they've all gravitated to some back office support. Well, that's good. Well, that really positions you to be able to grow. Good for you.
Yeah, well, we decided to do that because, like you said, the workflow and the I call it in the military op tempo was just so the work was not difficult, but it was piling up, and it was taking hours to write updates on projects and putting together investor statements. And then you always have the human error human error factor there that you have to be careful of. So I think that we're
Absolutely.
excited because this is going to make our lives a lot easier. And like you said, we haven't done 1600K ones, but I know my business partner has done a couple of 100K ones at any given time, and it's a lot of work. And if you could find something to streamline that process, it makes your business a lot more efficient. And the investors see that you're at the next level, right? You're now, kind of stepping up, and you're no longer in that crawl phase. You're now starting to walk and getting ready to run. So we're pretty
No,
excited about that.
investor perception of how big you are and how
Mhm.
established you are is important. You can
Yes.
get by on your first deal. I remember the first deal I did was with 4 investors, and we bought a 10-unit apartment building in St. Paul that we decided we'd manage ourselves. Okay.
Right.
And so I know many of my clients, when they came into the business, and you always come into the business because you'd like to buy a property, but you don't have all the money yourself to buy that property. So you're going to pool resources with other people. You always come in with them. And some of those people have said, I'm not coming in unless I can raise enough money to buy a property that has professional management. So I actually look like I'm not a do-it-yourself guy. And that's a hard way to start, but that's a good way. So
Yes, absolutely.
in this series of interviews that I've been doing, John, I'm trying to learn things for rookies. I've
Okay.
worked with a lot of rookies. I've been a rookie, you've been a rookie, and I actually have something that we call Rookie Camp. Every month we do an online course, which is it's Tuesday, Thursday, 3 hours each online, 15 people, just like this. I sit here, we have slides, my partner sits there, and we talk to people, and you can't join if you've been a syndicator, if you've done a deal. You just absolutely have to be a rookie. So
Okay.
my final question for this interview,
Sure.
John, is what advice would you have for a rookie who's out there is getting ready or thinking about doing their first deal?
I would say that do your homework, make sure that you understand what you're getting into, right? Depending on whether you're going to be the passive and syndicator like us, or you're going to be the person buying the property. Understand what you're getting into. Talk to people that have had the experience that you can learn from them, the good and the bad, right? Because you could save yourself a lot of time and headaches if you walk through, let's say, your deal with someone that you could go out to. And in the military, I always said that this is very important, and I do believe it now. Is you should have a mentor, one or two or three that you can go to, whether it's your trusted agent attorney like yourself, your accountant. Those are all your special trusted agents, but have a mentor you can go to that you can bounce ideas off of. That someone that's done this for a while. I always tell folks that I put people around me that make me better, and also are people that I can rely on to help me, not necessarily to always go to them and bother them and be cumbersome to them, but really just say, hey, I value your opinion. I value and trust what you have to say based on your experiences. And those folks will work with you, especially if you involve them on certain things or keep them posted on what you're doing and involve them in your success. I feel like that's very important for someone starting out. We all have ambitions and excitement to get things going, but when we realize how challenging it could be, we kind of get daunted or overwhelmed. So in order to combat that, I always suggest, do some research, review, look at people that have done it, Robert Kiyosaki, Grant Cardone, the smart guys that have done this for a long, long time, and then start going out to build your network of trusted experts that you can go to. I think that's probably the best advice I can give someone.
In the generation of this law practice right before today, we did Grant Cardone's Reg A offerings.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
that's a head trip. Well, your answer comes out a little different, but it's exactly the same answer that everyone I've asked gives, and generally it relates to the fact that this is not a do-it-yourself business. You need to have a team. You need to have resources. There's people out there that will mentor you. In fact, I go through some questions that I think investors should ask before they invest in anyone's deal. And if an investor should ask it, then the sponsor should know that the question is coming and know what the answer is. And the number one question always is, John, if I give you my money and I invest with you,
how do I get it back?
What happens if something happens to you?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question too.
And
yeah.
if you don't have the continuity answer, I would advise people not to invest. A lot of people call me and ask me, will you review this document, this offering agreement? I don't do that. But I have 4 questions I want them to ask, and it doesn't have to do with what's the cap rate and what's the ROI. It's what happens if something happens to the sponsor. We've had sponsors die of COVID in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if these sponsors hadn't agreed that our advice was good, there would have only been one person, that person been gone.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's in trouble.
Right.
So we've been able to solve that. The next question is, hey, have you done this before? So you have to have something to build on, because all of us have had to say, no, this is my first time, but, and then get that first deal done. So you never have to say no again. You say, hell yes, I did it once.
Yeah.
And then another question you have to be ready for is, do you have skin in the game?
Yep.
Well, for the most part, my clients do have skin in the game because they invest money and they sign the mortgage. Now, I don't imagine you in your group gets to play with signing the mortgage, but that means that you're investing cash right alongside of your other investors, right? So that's skin.
That's right.
That's great.
Yep. Yeah.
And then the last question is, if for the investor to ask is, if something happens to me, how do I get my money out? And John, you'd have to be able to say, well, Article 12 and 13 of the operating agreement covers liquidity. Mm-hmm. And you should read that, and let's talk about it. There's voluntary liquidity, there's involuntary liquidity, there's all sorts of things that can happen. The world is crazy sometimes, and you need to know that there is an out here for you. It's not a liquid asset, but there's always some plan, or there should be some plan, or don't invest in it. So
exactly. No, I appreciate those. Are great questions. They really are. And I think we all have different ways of asking those questions, but I think they all circle around those foundational questions you've just laid out. Those are very, very important. And I mean, I'm an investor just as I am the business owner. So I have to take my hat off as the business owner every once in a while and put my hat on as an investor, because I'm putting my money into this too. I don't want to just be motivated because, oh, it's my company, I have to put skin in the game. I'm actually putting on my own dollars. And so do I believe in this as an investment opportunity as an investor? So that's the other thing, is when I take my business hat off and I put my investor hat on, it's like, all right, what are the questions my investors are going to ask? Because, I'm an investor too.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the other things that I'm learning is that the passive investors, and there are a lot of them, I get calls all the time. I've invested in 27 passive deals, and now I want to be a syndicator. And my first answer is, why? But why would you do that? But I think the investors have to take a responsibility to be knowledgeable in the asset class. I don't think the sponsor is going to teach the investor about the apartment industry. In our world right now, the biggest types of investments we see are the most common are apartments, mobile home parks, and self-storage. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to, as an investor, take some responsibility for getting educated if you're going to invest in a deal like yours or a straight deal in that asset class. And the syndicator is not going to train you in the asset class. They'll train you about your deal. But I think you have a responsibility. And you used the word earlier, sophisticated investors. Well, I think sophisticated is a moving target. Last year, we did a Reg A plus on $50 million offering on racehorses. Okay, now to be a sophisticated investor on a racehorse fund is different than being a sophisticated investor on a mobile home park.
Right.
All right. And so when you as a sponsor are looking for those 35 sophisticated investors, what are they sophisticated in? And I think the investor has a responsibility, but that's a topic for another day.
No, it's a good point. It's a very good point. because you get sometimes you have investors that they may be accredited, but they qualify when it comes to the net worth or the income or the trust levels, but they ask very, I don't want to use the wrong word here, but they just ask questions that just kind of
Dumb
make you,
questions.
yeah,
They know that they're
rudimentary.
not,
I was going to
they're
use
not
rudimentary. I don't want to say
educated,
dumb, but they do
Well,
ask silly. Well, they ask questions that you just kind of do a double take and say, wait a minute,
yeah.
you're worth $10 million, or you're worth $5 million, whatever that dollar is above a million on the net worth side. You got there because you're pretty smart, I think, but why are you asking me, what happens if I lose my money, or, something like that, where it's just like, it's really something that you don't expect that someone like that would ask.
Well, it's different. You get to be a millionaire by inventing a product and manufacturing it, but that's totally different than investing in a
Right.
tenant common arrangement in
Right.
a mobile home park. So, well,
Absolutely.
John, thank you very, very much for your time. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Gene. This
And
was great. I appreciate it as
everyone
well.
who's watching, we always do a Trowbridge, a TLG Talks episode every Thursday at noon.
Yeah.
Pacific Standard Time, and we'll be broadcasting it through our YouTube channel. And I'm going to turn off the recording, but before I do, I'm going to say thank you again.
Thank you.